America is protecting its sovereignty with many of the things we're doing that many people don't agree with, because obviously war is terrible. And if we can diplomatically approach things, that's great to protect our sovereignty, but sometimes that is not the case. There's this narrative out there that the American dream is dying. I don't believe that. I am a byproduct of the American dream. I think as a leader, we must be well-rounded. And I think as individuals and men in this case, I think you need to be a protector and a provider and a leader. Those three critical things. You can't be one-dimensional. There is a time to fight, but more often not, that's the last-ditch resort. You know, we need to be able to be diplomatic and tactful and look for the other ways to be able to do things. Otherwise, you know, society would always just be chaos and lawlessness. I feel like every American citizen should own a gun and know how to use it. Fathers and mothers working together to protect their kids, their lifestyle, their religious beliefs, whatever it is, that is your unalienable right, and it should not be infringed upon.
Freedom is the song that we sing as we march on.
Jason, Redman, thank you so much for joining us here today. I really appreciate it. Really appreciate you being here. What made you sit down with us today? What inspired you to just say yes to this and be a part of this documentary?
I mean, it's a good question. I'll be honest, I looked into you guys prior, of course, like anyone. I mean, I think there's a level of vetting that needs to occur in this life. Don't jump at every opportunity, research, figure out. I looked at the background of the founders of Sovereign Self-Defense. I have a ton of respect for the Marine Corps. And really, I looked at what you guys have, and the combination of the two words, sovereign or sovereignty and self-defense. And I think that is, as a human, I think that is an unalienable right that God gave you, to be a sovereign. And if we're going to talk about men, I think inherently a protector. Not that women cannot be protectors. Man, I know some amazing mama bears that are crazy protectors, many more so than many men. But I think God intended for men to be protectors. Absolutely. And there's a sovereignty to your family that you protect your family, and that extends to your home, and that extends to your community. And obviously now we get into the sovereignty of nations. And I think it's a concept that I don't think a lot of people can fully wrap their heads around and understand, especially in this day and age, in this social media world where people aren't growing up with context of history. Mm-hmm. America is protecting its sovereignty with many of the things we're doing that many people don't agree with, because obviously war is terrible. And if we can diplomatically approach things, that's great to protect our sovereignty, but sometimes that is not the case. So that is one side. I'm very big on this. How we take care of America on the greater picture of sovereignty, and then that collapse all the way into the family unit and the sovereignty of a family, and fathers and mothers working together to protect their kids and their lifestyle, their religious beliefs, whatever it is. That is your unalienable right, and it should not be infringed upon. And then, of course, self-defense. We live in a dangerous world. I believe unequivocally in Second Amendment rights, and I believe our founding fathers were revolutionary in their idea, and they looked around the world at that time, and they said a citizenry that cannot defend itself will allow a totalitarian government to run unchecked. And so if we allow them to bear arms and to protect themselves, it creates it's an additional layer of checks and balances. And there are all kinds of people who say, well, the government has checks and balances. That's why we have Congress and, you know, presidential authority and the judicial branch. But the reality is all that can fail and can be corrupted and can collapse. And I mean, if any more time in history, I'm very concerned for the future of America, how divided we are. Ultimately, now it comes back to the American citizen. So your ability to protect yourself and bear arms, God forbid it ever went to that.
I appreciate you saying that, because the amount of feedback we've gotten from people for the name sovereign, you know, people will call us all the time and say, you're really bold to name your company Sovereign Self-Defense, you know? We're like, there's no other name when we came up with it, you know? And my husband is a Marine. Of course, he's the one that came up with the name of Sovereign Self-Defense. But you said something just now that I'd like to touch on a little bit deeper.
I'm just fascinated that people would say that, though, because it would be the equivalent of someone being insulted that you would write a living human.
Correct.
What's the difference? I think there is a sovereignty to live. You know, God intended us. He created every living organism, and in our case, humans being one of the most amazing of His creations. And to say that that's a bold statement is kind of mind-blowing to me.
Oh, I agree with you. And, you know, just being in that world, you know, we've heard a lot of things like our series is called The Warrior Workshop. And we've found out that a lot of people, more so law enforcement, of course, we train civilians, but law enforcement in some states cannot take courses if it says warrior. Now, we can guess, of course, which states those are. But we recently found that out because we're called our product and our series is called The Warrior Workshop. But I agree with you on the God-given rights. I'm primarily known online and Instagram. I do a lot of pro-Second Amendment content, but I don't get into, you know, the every little detail of let's dissect the Constitution this way and that way. Although I love that type of stuff, but what I love to look at is more of what you said, the God-given right to defend your life. To defend your life. I mean, we are here on earth, we're human beings, and I believe that it is our God. I believe that's what the founding fathers trusted and believed. It wasn't just, hey, let me go hunting or something like that. This is about, hey, if my life is on the line, I have a God-given right to be able to defend my life, right? So it's a non-negotiable for me.
I agree 100%. I guarantee, I wasn't there, but I'm willing to bet a ton of money that when they were crafting the Declaration of Independence and the Bill of Rights, not a single individual there said, you know what, we really need to protect their ability to hunt. They were forecasting out and they watched the world around them and they said, people need the ability to defend themselves.
Right, absolutely. So a few minutes ago, you said something about men being the protector. Right? And I completely agree with you. I personally believe there is a right order of things that we are seeing less and less of, right? In your community, in the military community and whatnot. Sure, there's a lot of more right order protectors, men and their families. But in civilian life, you know, a lot of the men these days are just not, they don't have, I mean, it's in there. I do believe it's in there. It's in all men, right? But I would say we see less and less of it on the exterior and a lot more of the social influence of being, you know, okay with women's emotions and stuff like that. What's your opinion? I mean, somebody that has been to combat and back, you know, what do you see?
You know, they often say it's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. But there is a balance there. I know a lot of great warriors who are amazing warriors, far better warriors than me, and they are a train wreck in every other aspect of their lives. They lack social leadership. They lack any kind of financial leadership. They lack any kind of, many of them, spiritual leadership. I think as a leader, we must be well-rounded. And I think as individuals and men in this case, I think you need to be a protector and a provider and a leader. Those three critical things. And so often I meet all these guys that their sole focus is on the protector side of things. Hey, I want to shoot guns. I want to train in martial arts. And then I want to do my own thing. You know, and they're lacking the two other critical parts of what I think God intended us as men. To be a protector is one side, but the other side is to be a provider. It's our job to help take care of our families. So there is a, you know, security and financial component of that. And then to be a leader, to set the example for your family and for your spouse, to set the example in your community. And there's an additional part that I see, kind of this toxic, like, hey, to be a warrior, it gives me an excuse to be a dick. And I disagree with that also. I mean, some of the great, I'll tell you, the greatest warrior I am friends with is an individual by the name of Sifu Alan Baker. Alan holds 25 black belts. You'll never hear that come out of his mouth. He is the most humble. but he has devoted his life from the time as a child to the warrior mindset and the warrior ethos. And he is trained. And there is no specific martial art that is like the checkbox that says, wow, this is what makes a warrior. It is the blending of all these things and the search for what works in different situations, whether it's a weapon, a firearm, a knife, a table, or it's his hands. But beyond that, he also is a leader and a provider. And I think he's such a great example of an individual who understands there's this balance in life. You can't be one-dimensional. There is a time to fight, but more often not, that's the last-ditch resort. We need to be able to be diplomatic and tactful and look for the other ways to be able to do things. Otherwise, society would always just be chaos and lawlessness.
Yeah, what I see in a lot of training is, what we say in our training, our tagline for our company is where personal protection meets personal development. Because our philosophy is, kind of what you're saying. If you don't have a gun on you, but you have your attention is on core values, meaning you've got commitment, honor, it's your duty. You got to win no matter what. Whether you have a firearm on you or not, you're going to win. This is what is embedded into men like yourself and my husband being a Marine. But in civilian life, I can speak from my own experience. We didn't grow up or we didn't go to a boot camp or a BUDS or anything that trained us in, how to become a great civilian and a warrior as a Second Amendment, gun owner or something like that, right? We just go out for the most part. They purchase their first firearm and maybe it sits in the safe and it's not even loaded, right? So, building the core values in humanity in America, I feel is more important than even the tactical stuff, right?
I would agree. A bit. I feel like every American citizen should own a gun and know how to use it. Now, their level of proficiency, no matter what. I think it should be every American citizen should get training.
Should want to.
And I almost think it should be paid for by the government. Now, there are people that are afraid of that. They're like, oh, well, the government is corrupt. I have lots of friends who they don't ever want to let the government know they have weapons. But my mindset is, well, if anything ever happens, Molan Lave, you got to come get them. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of us out there who have a lot of training in both defensive, small unit tactics. Anything that would make a, counterinsurgency, insurgency operations, anything that would make a nightmare for a government to actually try and go after its own citizens. Right. So I think individuals, A, you should have the right to own a firearm, and B, you should have some training proficiency. That's one side. Beyond that, then, how do we become the best version of ourselves in the other areas of our lives? Mm-hmm. There's this narrative out there that the American dream is dying, and I don't believe that. I am a byproduct of the American dream. We did not come from money. My mom is a naturalized citizen. My grandparents, my mom's father fought with the French in World War II. And then they immigrated to Canada. My mom was born in Canada, and then they came down to America, and my mom became a citizen. She loves this country. My dad's side of the family all served. My grandfather was a decorated World War II pilot. My dad served in the Army. During the Vietnam War, he did not go to Vietnam. My great uncle was killed during World War II, shot down in the Pacific Theater. So I just grew up with these things, and I wanted to serve also, and that became the path I went down. But now that I'm done with that, now I'm trying to make an impact in the other areas of my life. And part of that is on the entrepreneur journey. Part of that is impacting the community. Part of that is how do we continue to level up America, especially right now. 250 years, there's a lot of people that say America's on the decline, like we've seen the best it's ever been. I don't believe that. The American dream is very much still alive. People just have to be willing to go after it. And it ain't magic sauce. There's no one that's going to wave a wand and be like, Samantha, here, you're successful now. There are a lot of people that have this idea that, well, I'm entitled to it. if we go back to the Bill of Rights, what are the things that you're guaranteed as an American citizen? Life. So we should protect our citizens, and you have the sovereignty to protect your life and the lives of people around you. Liberty, so you have the freedom to do so. But the last thing is, and the pursuit of happiness. It doesn't say happiness.
Right.
It says pursuit. So that means it's on you to go after that. And I think that is the essence of the American dream. And we need to make sure our citizens, and I'll be honest, veterans more than any other people in this country, this is a little bit of a personal crusade of mine. I meet all these veterans who come back and they have this almost this entitled mindset, like, hey, I should be successful because I served. And I'm like, hey, good on you, much respect. I'm a fellow veteran, but there was no magic sauce that got me to where I am today. If anyone knows me, I grind hard. Most days are anywhere from 12 to 16-hour days, going nonstop. And I've had plenty of setbacks on top of some of the successes. So I try to convince our veterans, like, you have to go after it. And you have all the skills, the military taught you all the skills to be successful, but you're thinking in the warrior mindset. You now need to move over, still have that mindset, but you now need to apply it into the provider and leader mindset.
So have you ever studied or read anything with Carl Jung and the archetypes?
I'm familiar with it. I don't know if I've gotten in to read his books, but
Yeah, so Carl Jung just, what's basically, in a nutshell, what's going on collectively in our consciousness, and it's often unconscious. Like, this stuff is just happening unconscious and subconsciously. And he narrowed it down into, nowadays in more modern times in psychology, there's lots of different archetypes and whatnot, but Carl Jung built the foundation of this and really defined it as warrior, lover, king, and wizard. And, just to what you were saying earlier, some men, they need to integrate their warrior. And I think a lot of people, I'm not talking about military men. You guys, you go to the military, you're mastering, right? A lot of guys mastering that warrior, right? Some guys that don't join and do not serve at all, I mean, they need to integrate it. That's why we're seeing such, now that can be done in business, that can be done in other ways, athletics, etc. But, we see a lack of the warrior. And then I see what you're saying is the other extreme is they're so fixated on they have a level of, that's the comfort zone is the warrior. I mean, I know my husband, who's in a future episode of this, got out of the Marine Corps and was more comfortable going to combat than he was coming home, at the time. And it's like, hey, that's an easy world. It's black and white. Civilian world, it's not.
Chaos and complicated.
Exactly. So, it's like going back to those archetypes, that warrior, right? And then the next one is lover. So a lot of people think that this is like, about, love and hairy-fairy or something like that. But it's really what I feel and what I believe is it's more about intimacy, like having a connected conversation, being able to have successful friendships, being able to have long-term relationships, which we don't see. It's actually pretty uncommon to see somebody that is a warrior on the battlefield come home and have a successful marriage. And you've actually kind of changed the game in that story where you do have a long-term successful marriage and you even have a book about it. Yeah. So can you speak to that? Like, what's been your experience going from that warrior world back to, your wife and how you guys have worked through that type of stuff?
I think the interesting thing is for a lot of guys who are warriors, they think it's this either or thing. Like, hey, I'm a warrior and all that is external and I'm just not good at that stuff. That's the mindset. And I would vastly disagree. Many of the things that I learned in the SEAL teams and in the military, I have built frameworks to work in all the other areas of my life. And even marriage. I mean, our book, Mission Invincible Marriage, is a it's built around those frameworks. They're all the same frameworks that you use in the military. You're just applying them to your marriage. I was blessed enough to serve at some of our top tier units, and we frequently were assigned, no fail missions, or those teams were assigned no fail missions. I'm intrigued because today in America, we're at almost a 50% divorce rate. If you take the protector community, so law enforcement, fire, and military, it averages around 60 to 70%. If you take the special operations community, it's up to 80%, and the SEAL teams, we are the winners at 90%. Yay us!
Right.
And I think for some of that, it's once again, it's this compartmentalization to say, hey, I'm a warrior and I'm not good at that stuff. So, either to the spouse, hey, this is my life, you either take it or leave it, or it becomes that collision point that I think every protector has heard at some point. Hey, it's either me or the job. And there's communication, and there are things, one of the most critical things, communication. But there's also, it goes back to the beginning, we talked a little bit about commitment. You're committed to the mission of being a warrior. Well, you should be committed also to your spouse. When Eric and I got together and we decided to get married, both of us had come from broken homes. My parents were divorced, her parents were divorced, enough drama. And we both said, this is forever. If we're doing this, the only way out of this is death. And as it should be. No different on a mission.
Right.
So that is the book is broken into 3 parts. And the first part is mission. And for any mission, it's built on a foundations of values and culture and ethos. If you look at any military unit, the Marines have this tremendous ethos and culture built around the Marine Corps. And it drives them. It drives them towards success. It drives them towards winning. It drives them towards the pride in their unit, that their unit that's going forward in a battle or in training or whatever they're doing, it drives them. Well, why are you not applying that to your marriage? It should be the same. The house of Redman is a strong house. Right. I have raised my kids to understand, like, hey, we drive forward. We don't quit. If we start something, we finish it. That's part of our culture and ethos. And this separation that is existing, where I watch guys who are like these strong warriors, but you're a train wreck in the other areas of your life. I don't understand it. I'm like, why are you not applying the principles that you use in the military, the other side of your life? Now it goes both ways. Spouses, wives, also need to apply this.
Yeah. What core values did you see in Erica, or do you see in Erica, that creates in her and such a successful marriage?
Erica is amazingly strong, resilient. She's a good communicator. She's a great leader. I like many warriors, I was gone for years. And even now in our business, I am gone all the time. And I rely on her to be the anchor and the leader in our family, although we work together. It's not either or. Her and I together are an amazing team. I also, when I came home from deployments, I didn't come home and suddenly plant my flag and say, hey, the leader is home. You will now direct all questions to me. I'm making this person obsolete. Like, you're crazy. Talk about a major disruption. I mean, this individual has operated as the commanding officer of this family for the last 6 or 7 months while you were off doing, an amazing job. There's a balance. I always came back and I looked at, how can I help you to what you've already been doing? How do I support you? So once again, that's mission, that's value and ethos and the culture of the family. The next thing becomes training. In any military unit, we train all the time. We're constantly training to be ready for war. And all the complexities that go into that. How do we communicate? How do we deal with this situation or that situation? How do we use this new equipment? How do we blah, blah, blah? Your marriage is no different.
Right.
You should be constantly training. And people are like, well, I don't understand this. Believe it or not, just sitting down and talking about the family. How are we raising our kids? What are the decisions we're making? All that's training, believe it or not.
I agree.
You're learning about your spouse, what they respond to. They're learning about you. And we're constantly growing in life. So who you were when you got married.
was just going to say this.
Yeah, super different from who you
Completely
are.
different.
Yeah. So that's why we must always train, communication being the key. Communication is the critical component of any military operation. It's the critical component for any business, relationship. So training. And then the last one is how do you execute under fire? Military members, does this sound familiar? Mission, training, and then how do we manage under fire? So in a marriage, how do you deal with the stresses and chaos and the life ambushes that come along? And they're always coming for everyone. So how do you manage that? There are one training helps you to understand. Hey, I can run a little hot, so I'm quick to anger, so I got to manage that. Erica knows that about me. She knows how to bring me down a little bit. She also can be very emotional sometimes. I recognize I can't continue to push, or else I'm gonna push her over the edge. So it's understanding those things. In combat, we operate under rules of engagement. We have rules of engagement in our marriage. So number one, there's no ultimatums. So you can never say, hey, well, this is it, or I'm getting a divorce, or we're going to get a divorce. You were never allowed to say that. The D word was off the table. Number two, you can't bring up things from the past. This is a big thing that happens in marriages, and it happens in business. If someone messed up, you address it, you hold them accountable, and then once that's done, you move forward. And it should be the same in a marriage. You can't continue to bring up things from the past, which seems to be a major sticking point, especially if they genuinely owned it and moved forward from it. The other spouse has to.
Self-responsibility. I'm laughing inside because the way you're speaking is exactly how my husband and I operate as a couple as well in our marriage. It's like core values are number one, and it's a mission. And when him and I got together, long story short, we got together and said, we're not going to live a regular life. And, his story of really tapping into his own mission in life after the Marine Corps. He was years, which a lot of men can relate to, getting out of the service and not having a mission, being a Marine and not having a mission. Now he's in civilian life, really was affecting him for a little while. And then when he created the warrior workshops and sovereign self-defense, it was like, boom, back on mission. And now, yes, we say, of course, we have a pretty successful company and everything, and we're constantly growing, but this is not, sure, it's a business, but for us, it's about being on a mission. And we're here to evolve humanity. We're here to build core values. The stronger that the citizenry gets in America and these gun owners actually have training and value themselves and value others, the more that's going to ripple out into their life outside of the range, if you will.
Well, yeah, because it comes full circle to the American dream.
Exactly.
You guys have created a business around teaching people how to defend themselves. And it makes your family stronger, it makes the community stronger, and ultimately it'll make America stronger. Same for Eric and I. We're following our American dream. Every American citizen that accomplishes their American dream is a ripple effect for the success of America. So we want that. And selfishly, I want every veteran to accomplish their American dream. And I'm working towards ways to make that happen. Technology is changing the field, our ability to access. I'm a founding member of a new tech company, TurboBets, where we're leveraging technology to unify the service member and benefits process across the entire ecosystem and make it easier. But at the end of the day, it always comes back to the individual.
Absolutely.
I can give you all the tools in the world. If you're unwilling to use them, you will not be successful. You can train somebody at the highest level. If they're unwilling to use the tools, the weapon they have, the training they've been given, there is a high chance they probably put into a dangerous situation will not win.
Yeah, we always said when we first started this company about 10 years ago, and we mapped out who's the ideal client, and we said a willing person. Willingness was the number one quality, and coachable, somebody that actually can say, we have people that maybe they've been shooting 20 years, their whole life or something, and then they come to our level 1 training, which we require everybody to start at level 1. I don't care how long they've been shooting for, you start right at level 1. And if you're willing and you're actually coachable and trainable, then you don't mind that. You're like, yeah, I do want to start at level 1, you know? But I want to ask some questions about you personally, because when I was, looking into kind of prepping this, and we talked a little bit about this earlier, I was like, wow, your parents split up when you were young. And I know you lived with primarily both parents back and forth and stuff, but your father actually got custody of you, which is pretty rare, I would say, in the grand scheme of things. But what lessons did you take from your father growing up?
I think the biggest lessons that came from my father, although I would say it was both sides. I mean, I was 3 when my parents divorced, so I was super young. So there was no part of me that was like, oh, this is weird, because I was too young to recognize that. Older now, I recognize that's an unusual thing. But for the most part, my dad getting custody of us didn't change too much. We still went to my mom's on the weekends and stuff like that. So I would say that what my dad brought, and my mom also from different contexts, was this deep love of country and service. I grew up with stories of, on my mom's side, my grandfather's service, and on my dad's side, my paternal grandfather's service. And from a young age, that's all I wanted to do. Like, that was my focus. Like, someday I'm going to serve. I originally wanted to be a pilot like my grandfather. Top Gun came out. I was, 11 years old, and I was like, I'm going to be Maverick. And, but then I started learning about special operations, and it took me down that path. But no matter what, it was always this, commitment to service, and that had existed in our family going back, a couple of generations.
Yeah. And the commitment, that is the core value that we're really talking to you about. What would you say is a moment? Now, some of the viewers might know your story and some of them might not, but just tell us a little bit of a moment that you have had to apply commitment. It could be in the battlefield or even in your everyday life, but just a moment where you had to actually apply it.
Yeah, I mean, I would say so often many people who know my story associate it with the intense gunfight that we got into in 2007, where I was seriously wounded, closest fire mission ever executed in the Iraq War, and the recovery, the sign on the door, all those things. I would say there was a high level of commitment that occurred when the sign was written, but it really went back to when I failed as a leader. That is the hardest, lowest. Sat in a chair in Afghanistan and put a gun in my mouth and almost took my life. And rebuilding myself and understanding, like, hey, you are not a good leader. It's easy when we mess up to buy into our failures and say, well, that's who you really are. And it's not. It's a mistake. It's a myriad of things that leads to our downfalls and the life ambushes that come along. But ultimately, ownership is one of the biggest things. So there's a level of commitment to say, hey, I did this. And I started to realize that as I walked this journey, and I had to rebuild myself as a leader and commit to that, despite the doubts, despite many naysayers around me and the SEAL teams who were like, get rid of that guy, that guy's dangerous. And sometimes it was easy to give into that and be like, wow, maybe they're right. Maybe I messed up, and maybe this isn't the right path for me. And I think to stay committed despite that, it was really hard. I had plenty of people around me in the SEAL teams who did not want me there. They were like, yeah, that's that's Rambo Red, the guy that screwed up in Afghanistan. I don't want to work with you. So that probably was a period of the largest commitment of my life, to commit to the principles, the frameworks that I had built. You got to lead yourself, lead others, lead always. And it's hard. I mean, it's hard, and none of us are perfect. I sure am not. I have failed and made mistakes along the way even from that moment. But I think the difference is your commitment is what, and you could take commitment, discipline, purpose, and we can combine these things together. It is recognizing that as humans, we're broken and we are going to make mistakes. But you always come back to this. This is, I'm committed to this family. I'm committed to be a leader. I'm committed to these goals. I'm committed to set the example. I'm committed to the frameworks I've built for myself to try and be the elite version of me, physically, personally, and professionally. And that is what keeps you on course. So most humans, I would say, have goals where they'd like to go in those three areas, physically, personally, and professionally. But they lack the commitment and the discipline to execute on them. So what will happen is they run through their life in a frenzy, embracing comfort the majority of the time. And every now and then they're like, I want to be in better shape. Oh, Samantha, she's really successful. I'd really like to be where she is. So I'm going to commit for a short period of time. So what ends up happening is 90% of the time they lack commitment. They're just kind of unstructured in this chaos. And then 10% of the time they remember and they're like, oh, that is really what I want to do.
Right.
The difference is people who truly have commitment, who are finding success, are those who 90% of the time they are committed.
Yeah.
They're following their goals. And 10% of the time, myself included, I mess up and get off course.
Yeah.
But I always remind myself, this is who you are, get back on track.
Yeah, in my world, it all comes down to, where is my attention? Is my attention on the part of me that says I'm a failure, I'm a loser, which we all have our versions of that, right? Or is my attention on, I'm committed to success, I'm committed to making this goal happen, I'm committed to going to the gym or becoming an entrepreneur, or whatever flavor it is for the individual. But what I found is that it's all the location of our attention. If my attention is on how committed I am and the payoff at the end of the road, then my actions are going to follow, right? The people that I need to meet, the things that I need to do, those are naturally going to follow into place because my attention is on where I want to get to and that level of commitment, and it's just my duty to live this way. But every once in a while we all get sucked into our head, right? And the liar, right? And listen to that, but it's like, hey, the ability, the true skill is the mastery to go from that liar and shift and redirect attention onto the ideal and onto the goal. And then the actions kind of follow themselves, right? So what I'd like to do is I would like to walk you through the sacred 7 core values. Okay, so you might have read about it on our website or something like that, but I'm just going to walk you through why these are in the order they're in, and then we can kind of debrief it, okay? So the sacred 7 core values, a group of men, a couple Marines and a few others, got together and said, hey, if there were, a list of values for basic humanity to live by that would build you to be a successful individual, a good person, a good human being, what would these values be? And this is what this group of men came up with, was these sacred 7 core values. They are in order of importance. So courage is number 1. So what they found was that without courage, there's no country, there's no humanity, there's nothing, right? We see what happens in nations that even the citizenry lacks courage, right? So courage, and just on a more personal level, the courage to start a business, the courage to actually get up and make a decision. Sometimes you got to lead and it takes that courage, right? Well, in our world, we really found it's the courage to be honest. And that's a lot of what I hear you're saying is when you expressed those failures, it's like, hey, the courage to be self-honest and say, okay, I didn't get the job done, or here's where I could be better. And a lot of people just want to be honest with you. Hey, Jason, you need to go to the gym. You need to lose 10 pounds or blah, blah, blah. But it's a pretty rare quality for people to say, I need to. Here's where I need to improve. So the courage is really applied to self-honesty, which once somebody's courageously honest with themselves, it leads to a sense of integrity. So integrity is the third. And that integrity is really just wholeness, fulfillment, being able to actually create a successful life, feel good about yourself, live in integrity with what you say and what you do match up. And then once you are courageously self-honest and you have that sense of integrity, it requires commitment. Because as you were speaking to earlier, that old habit, those old habits, that old voice in the head that's been there since this big, it's going to kick in. It's going to start saying, are you really able to do this? Who do you think you are? Or whatever, right? So the commitment in this regard is where the rubber meets the road. And once you've made that decision, like, this is it, I am committed, then you start to hit duty. It's just my duty to live this way. You know, going back to the mission that you were talking about, that your wife and you were on, and my husband and I are on, you know, our business, it's our duty. It's my duty to be doing this interview and have these viewers celebrate the core values of America. This is for America. This is for humanity, really. But you feel that purpose and that duty. And then you start to feel honor. And the way that we explore honor is, there's a lot of people that say, I'm an honorable man, or I'm an honorable woman, or something like that. But in this regard, you know, and then their actions are not that, right? Like, oh, I'm an honorable person, but, you know, the integrity is not really there. It's not really matching up. In this regard, honor's bestowed upon you. People look at him and say, Jason, that's an honorable man, you know, or what have you, right? And then the last quality is actually love. And love is actually last very deliberately. And I always like to ask people, why do you think love is last on the list, in that list of core values?
That's a deep question, because I would say that in some ways, I would say love is probably the foundational level of everything we do. You know, I think God made us with the ability to love each other and love the world around us. And I think that's one of the things that drives us. If it's not, you know, in some ways, you look at someone who hates themselves, very self-destructive behaviors, whereas you look at someone who is confident in themselves and begins to become secure in who they are. You know, it drives a lot of the things that they do. You know, it drives them to accomplish things. It drives them to have a family. It drives them to be a leader and to have courage. So, I don't know. I'm curious. I'd like to know why you put it last, as opposed to, I mean, all your values they overlap with 5 frameworks that I live by.
Yeah, I saw that. That's why I brought it up. And, you know, the reason why love is last is because our belief is that until somebody has actually, you know, developed the first 6, it's not really even love. You know, yes, I agree with you. We do have the ability as humans that God has given us this amazing capacity to love, but there's also a lot of other stuff that can get in the way. And there's a lot of bad things that have happened to people in the name of love, right? We see it, but, you know, truly, you know, even on a physical, emotional, and spiritual level, if somebody is courageous, self-honest, like you said, things happen in marriage, you know, but to look in the mirror and say, all right, I can do better, you know, let's move on. It's like, that's a level of self-honesty that, if without that, is it really even love? And the type of love that we're talking about is really like an unconditional, eternal love. So that, to answer that is why the creators of that put love last. So last question, we can get wrapped up here, is, in your viewpoint, Jason, what makes America great?
You know, America was born out of a choice. When our founding fathers decided to go against, at that time, the greatest military might in the world, against England and the King of England, you know, we were, you know, territories of them, and we were tired of the taxation without representation. Hey, we're going to take what you've done, but you receive no benefit from it. And it was a choice. I mean, and if you summarize freedom, that's what freedom is. You have a choice in how you are going to live your life. You have a choice in the directions you're going to go. And there's a lot of individuals in our country who want to try and say, oh, if you're from this demographic, race, creed, color, gender, religion, I don't care what it is. They will place you into a box and say, oh, well, you can't achieve the American dream because you're a woman or because you're XYZ, this color or this religion or whatever it is. The problem with that is there are tens of millions of people that match all those demographics who are highly successful, and it all goes back to the initial choice. If you were to summarize what makes America great, it is that choice. It is individuals who have chosen again and again and again and again, whether it's to pursue the path of success through education or building a business or in the biggest moments of our country, World War II, the entire nation chose to come together, and we became this military-industrial complex. Women and family members at home building bombs and building military equipment. Well, the majority of the men across America went and fought against, at that time, the greatest threat we had seen, fascism. So I would dare say the 250 years of success that we have been built around choice. That's why it's so dangerous. Be very careful and leery of the erosion of our freedoms. Individuals who are like, well, I just want the government to take care of me. Well, what they're stripping away from you, whether you like it or whether you realize it or not, is your choice. If you are
Free will.
Yeah, which 100%, God intended you to have free will, which is a choice.
Right.
A choice in how you're going to live your life. What path you're going to go down, what career, what do you want to do? How do you want to lead your family? How do you want your kids educated? All built around freedom or choice. Yeah. So my challenge to everyone out there is stop buying into the lies that you're being told and understand that if we want to see America successful for the next 250 years, which I do, I gave up 21 years of my life for the American citizens who live in this country. I sacrificed all the things that were bestowed to me as an American citizen. I sacrificed potentially my life. When I joined the military at that day, I acknowledged that I may have to lay down my life for my country and place myself in dangerous situations. And I have 30 friends who no longer are here, guys I served with because of they made that choice also. Liberty. You give up your freedom when you're in the military. Yeah. When they said, hey, Jay, you're going to Iraq, I wasn't like, that doesn't work real well for me. I'm kind of busy. I got things going on.
Try me in 2 weeks.
Yeah. And then obviously the pursuit of happiness, even that, you're placing it on hold somewhat. You're sacrificing your earning potential. All of that was a choice I made to serve my country, while other citizens had the choice to how were they going to live their life and live off that freedom that was bestowed upon them as an American citizen. So in order for us to have an amazingly successful next 250 years, we need to reinvigorate that once again.
Yeah, I agree. Well, thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate you. And I can't wait to share this episode with everybody because it means a lot for people to hear from you. So the last thing I'm going to say to you is everybody, looks up to you. A lot of these men,
Not everybody.
I think a lot of men look up to you as their hero, and maybe even younger men too, that, just being in the military, they look up to you, right? So you're seen as maybe their hero. Who's your hero?
I'm fascinated with George Washington because of the conviction he had. I think the greatest trait of any leader is a conviction in their beliefs to execute. And George Washington did it to a level that we would not have a nation if he had not. And I would never compare myself to him. I am 10% a leader. He was. There are other leaders I served in the military that had many of those same traits. But I'm fascinated. If you look at the winter when he was at Valley Forge, at the darkest moments of the Revolutionary War, everyone doubted him. Even his own friends were doubting his leadership. And he stayed resolute to continue to navigate this. And it wasn't just warriorship, it was statesmanship, the ability to build these relationships with the French, and which enabled us, we wouldn't have won the Revolutionary War if it wasn't for the French. So anyways, I have tremendous respect for that.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming. And yeah, we'll keep you updated with everything that we're doing here in the other episodes. And I appreciate you coming here.
Yeah, Samantha, thanks
Thank
for having
you.
me.
If you enjoyed this episode on the road to greatness, then make sure you catch this video to learn from another veteran on what makes America great and the core values that build America.